Hunley?
Yo, okay.
Whoa.
I had a rogue tab that was playing the show, and had to track it down. Had to get it. Had to kill it because I was hearing time lapse and the sound and everything else. Everything's crazy in DC. I'm here, so of course.
Hunley's in the Watergate. He's checking on his wiretaps.
Yes, absolutely. I had to report into the bosses, right? I mean, I'm supposed to be a limited hangout. Occasionally I have to report in.
Well, how long are you there? You're there till Monday, or what's the deal?
No, I'm just leaving tomorrow morning.
Okay, all right.
Came up here, meeting Nate, hanging out for a little bit, and
did you meet Nate, the lawyer?
I did, and he's everything I could have ever asked for.
No, because this is a common phenomenon among YouTubers. They don't meet for 20 years, and then they meet up, and it's really either under expectations or over expectations. Like when I met Hunley, we were in Dallas, and he was in the other room, and he came in, and then I don't know when Viva met Barnes. I mean, there's this whole period of time where you don't meet the other person for years sometimes, right, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I didn't meet you. I'm saying you're doing a show with you twice a week.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Then when I met you, I said it wasn't. It was kind of like I knew you for so long. It didn't really matter. That's why I was asking you, how did you feel about meeting Nate, the lawyer?
No, I mean, it's awesome to close that loop. So at least everybody who is a co-host I met in person.
Right. Okay. Who have I not met? No, it's me too. Yeah. Well, we should meet Rich Barris at some time. And speaking of New Jersey, I think Rich Barris is from New Jersey, and I think our guest Michael Tracey today might be from New Jersey originally, but we can ask him when and if we get him on here. The journalist
should be coming on momentarily. Do you want to explain this? Because like
I said, I'm a big fan of Michael Tracey's. As many people know, I've been a investigative journalist for the Village Voice media years ago. For about maybe 12 years, I did investigative reporting for the Village Voice and the LA Weekly. So I'm a big fan of Tracey's work. So that being said, we just started going back and forth this morning about RFK Jr.'s speaking disorder, kind of in a light trolling manner, nothing crazy. I mean, I saw Barnes was talking to him, so I jumped in, started making some comments about the King's Speech movie and some other people who may or may not have had speech impediments over the years, or bizarre regional accents is where we really danced around. So I asked him to come on the show today, and surprisingly, he agreed, which is a great pleasure for us, Eric.
I agree, and I don't want to hold him up too long. I think he's driving right now through the rain, so I don't know. Maybe he's in the same area of the country I am. It is a disaster here.
It's raining there, Eric? Is it teeming, or?
Oh, it's been raining all day. I managed to buy a brand new umbrella last night because of the rain. It's already blown inside out and has one part torn off.
Wow.
One day.
Wow.
So, great factor. But I'm going to go ahead and bring him in.
Oh, great. Okay.
Michael Tracey, how are you doing? I hear you rain.
He's outside in the rain now. He's outside in the rain.
Yeah, I was actually in D.C. this morning as well, and I'm driving back to Jersey City, and the rain has followed me the entire way through. So.
Oh. Be careful, Michael.
So I was right.
Be careful.
No, I'm good. I'm hands-free. I'm following safety protocols, I think. So
right. A lot of those roads, Michael, as you're well aware, especially the overpasses, are racist, so be careful.
Haven't encountered any racist overpasses yet, but I'll be on the lookout.
A lot of them are on Long Island, apparently. The Robert Moses Joan Beach Causeway, I think, is one of the top racist overpasses, according to Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah, well, the Jersey Turnpike probably is racist because there was a notorious scandal among the New Jersey State Police in the 90s, I want to say, where they clearly had a pattern of racially discriminated.
Oh, right. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Interesting.
But I'm white, thankfully, so I guess that'll immunize me from any.
You're the luckiest man on the face of the earth, Tracy, just to be in that position. I got to give it to you. Listen, I've been a big fan of your stuff. I've seen you with the Gray Zone. I've seen you with Tucker. I've seen you with a few different platforms. So I'm quite excited that you came on today, despite, going back and forth with you this morning, just kidding around,
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't take any of that stuff personally. So I'm within reason. I'm willing to basically come anywhere.
Oh, good. That's good to know. That's good to know. So you're from Jersey originally. I'm from New York. I don't know if Nate the lawyer's coming on. He's from New York. Eric's from the East Coast. I'm getting a whole warm feeling here. I'm in Hollywood, by the way, Michael. So I'm getting homesick, bro, just listening to you and Eric. So.
Yeah, I lived in LA for a little bit, but I can't say that it makes me homesick to hear somebody who's in Hollywood.
Well, it depends what you sound like. In other words, like we were talking, me and you, about regional accents, to get into it, about Bernie Sanders, and I was only kidding, but because you were saying that RFK Jr. had speaking problems, but
well, I don't understand what the confusion is here. I mean, does anybody actually dispute that his vocal cords are fried, in the sense that I'm not diagnosing some kind of literal medical condition? I'm noting he has an impairment that inhibits his ability to enunciate his vocalization of his speech.
Well,
does anyone dispute that having the ability to speak is an important thing for a presidential candidate? I don't think anybody reasonably disputes either of those things, but even so, there's just like an outpouring of fury over my
I didn't know that.
Fairly straightforward observation.
Were other people jumping on this or what?
Oh, people have going wild all day.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was just I used to be an editor of National Lampoon, so I was just look, I would be the first one to say it, if it wasn't there wasn't any humor to it, but I didn't know people were jumping on you that badly.
Oh, I mean, don't worry about it. But people jump on me for all kinds of nonsense. But yeah, but there's clearly a particular, I don't know, allegiance to this individual among certain online cohorts that such that if you say even the most trivially obvious thing about this person, they launch into a rage.
Well, okay, so what is this, like a Bernie cult that he has going here, or what? What's the deal, Michael?
I don't. No, I wouldn't call it a Bernie cult
yet.
I don't know. Maybe you might be more familiar with his following than I am. I mean, I get the sense that there's a very dedicated online following in particular that probably grew exponentially over the course of COVID, and in relation to his vaccine-related advocacy, specifically to do with COVID. And that was part of the impetus for him to declare that he's ostensibly running for president. And so I don't know. I mean, I don't know that I would liken this story to Bernie's following, but there's some following there. I don't want to say it's inorganic necessarily. I think there's probably an organic devotion to him.
His
but
family
it makes it such that, I mean, people are making biblical references to how
what?
Yeah, people are saying. I've had multiple people tell me that or lecture me for not appreciating that Moses also had a speech impediment, and
everybody knows that about Moses because you can listen to the Moses tapes, which came out on Epic Records in 1953.
Okay, I got to check that out.
Yeah, check that. They're on. You can get them on CD now, though, Michael. So don't worry about the vinyl.
Okay, I read the Old Testament and I thought that did the job, but I guess not.
Right. Well, he's got spasmodic dysphonia, just for the audience at home, which is a what you call fried vocal cords, is actually a thing called spasmodic dysphonia, which a lot of people realize what he has. He has improved over the years. I got to say, I did the Sirhan parole hearing with him last year. The two of us trying to get Sirhan paroled, and we were successful in getting him paroled by the Newsom parole board. And then Newsom went against his own handpicked parole board and said Sirhan might kill again. And the same two sisters of Robert Kennedy at that time came out against him, saying easily he could take an Uber from Pasadena to Malibu and kill them. So Newsom took that into account and refused to parole Sirhan. But the point of the matter was, I got to meet up with Bobby Kennedy at that time, not through COVID, but through that. Oh, I think we got some Jersey Turnpike interference here.
Oh yeah.
It's a little in and out, Michael.
Hopefully he'll pick up a signal soon.
Okay. Well, anyway, I could talk to Eric for a while because I like talking to Eric, but I'm more used to talking to Eric than to Michael. But so anyway, so Michael, when he comes back, I wanted to ask him about his physical attack of Ann Coulter that got him arrested at some point. I don't know if he wants to elaborate on that. I think it's a number of years ago.
Well, I came prepared.
Okay.
So I expect.
Okay. In the meantime, apparently Hunley and I, with your help, have hit 70,000 subscribers, Eric, right?
Yep, 70.1, dude. Don't leave out the new 100 for the day.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
That's crazy, Eric. I think it's because of this.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Welcome back.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. It might drop in and out. I don't know how to exactly, but
No problem.
I was just saying that whatever his condition may be medically, it's sort of immaterial. The point is that he has a fairly severe and noticeable impairment of his speech, and I don't know why it's seen as controversial by anyone to simply note that.
No. I've
gotten a ton of messages today from people saying, yeah, they're interested in what he's espousing with his message, but they can't sit through more than 30 seconds of him speaking.
Right. It was just surprising to me to hear you, an avowed anti-war progressive leftist, denounce the first anti-war progressive leftist to come into the debate because of a speech impediment. I thought.
Well, I didn't denounce him, and also I didn't denounce him, and I also don't go around avowing myself as that. And I didn't denounce him. I made a factual observation about him. How is that a denunciation?
Well, we thought that would come as low-hanging fruit from many of his opponents immediately as he entered the race, and you seem to be the first one to point it out.
Well, why? Okay. I mean, I make observations about every political figure that I'm looking at. I mean, it's not because of some grudge.
This is low-hanging fruit, Michael. That's why we were surprised.
Wait, but if it's
everyone's aware of his speech impediment. I'm just surprised that it was you who was the first out of the gate to point out the obvious that the emperor has no clothes.
Well, I didn't say the emperor has no clothes. I just pointed out that the guy's speech is unbearable, and that's kind of a liability for a presidential candidate. People find that so infuriating and controversial is their own problem.
How many other anti-war candidates have you seen enter the race who may speak clearly or more clear than him that you could get on the back of?
I don't know. I mean, you say that he's anti-war. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't studied his full record yet. But even if he is, even if I agree with him on 100% of every issue, I don't see how that would preclude me from pointing out just a basic factual observation about him.
Well, because it's so obvious to everyone what color his hair is and then his speech impediment. I don't know why it's necessary for you to point it out.
Well, I mean, then ignore the tweet. I mean, why are people so upset about pointing it out? I mean, the burden is on you to explain why you're so infuriated. Not you in particular, but anybody who's infuriated by it. I mean, the burden is on them to explain why just a straightforward factual observation infuriates them so much.
Again, if the candidate was 4'11" and you pointed out he was 4'11" and everybody knew he was 4'11", and you said that was an impediment, I think they would jump on you.
Wait, so is the speech not an impediment?
I don't know. They say Biden's a stutterer. There was the king.
Forget Biden. Well, we can talk about Biden separately if you want. I'm talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
I don't think it's an impediment. I think that he has a condition of his speech that I'm kind of used to over the years. It was kind of like when Trump, I'll just give this a bizarre example. but it was kind of like when Trump came on the scene. Us in the Northeast, and this may include you, grew up listening to Trump on Howard Stern. He didn't come out of nowhere to become a media figure because you and I and others in the Northeast had grown up with Trump. So it wasn't like some people on the left never heard of him before.
But that's a ridiculous. But that's a ridiculous analogy. Trump does not have a physical impairment of his ability to project vocally. He has a regional dialect that some people.
No. I'm not talking about the regional dialect. I mean, I could talk about Bernie Sanders with a regional dialect.
Sanders and Trump both have it from the same area.
No. Bernie Sanders does not sound like Donald Trump.
Well, they both have New York regional dialects. That's what I meant.
And that's a broad statement. That's a very
of course it is.
Right. That's a very broad statement. Bernie Sanders' Brooklyn Jewish accent, and I'm being a Brooklyn Jew, is far different than Trump's accent, which is coming out of Queens, which is kind of a mainstream.
Yeah, they're both New York City dialects. I mean, I'm not saying that they're the same. They're just different.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Species of dialect.
Right. That's right. You're right. But I remember the reason I mentioned you on Twitter.
That's why it makes no sense to bring up Trump or Sanders as an analogy. They don't have a physical impairment.
No. The only reason I make the analogy is because I remember tons of people talking about Bernie Sanders' Brooklyn Jewish accent as an impediment when he ran, Michael. I heard the same thing from RFK's father about when he announced that he had a high Boston nasal twang and it was an impediment. At some point, these are not impediments. It's the
but that's not a physical impediment.
It doesn't matter.
I'm talking about a physical limitation on his ability to speak.
Well, Biden
it's not a regional twang. Okay, so now you're bringing up Biden again. I'm not talking about Biden.
I'm talking about oration. I'm talking about orators.
I'm talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'm not talking about Joe Biden. If you want to talk about Biden, let's talk about it separately.
No, I'm just comparing two orators who are going to run against each other, Michael.
Okay, well, fine. Make the comparison then. I don't see what Biden's deficiencies have to do with RFK's limitations.
I'd rather have a guy with a physical speech impediment than a guy who's got mental impairment affecting his speech.
Okay, you can. That's fine. I'm not making a pro-Biden argument. This is what people can't wrap their heads around.
I'm just comparing two political candidates who happen to be running against each other.
Okay, that's fine, but that's the thing. In making this observation about RFK, I'm not in turn making any kind of pro-Biden argument. I'm not going to vote for Biden. I don't know why people are crazed over this.
I didn't think you were. I'm just saying we thought that this attack on people that I spoke to felt that he would be attacked about his vocal impairment by people in the Hillary camp. Let me just put it that way.
Well, if you perceive just a basic description of truthful reality as an attack, then that's your problem.
No. I'm not saying from you. I'm just surprised it came from you first.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, you're merely pointing out the obvious, which is obviously a weakness for RFK Jr. as a candidate. Everybody knows that.
Okay, well there you go.
So let's talk about Biden and other candidates.
No. I wanted to move on to the next thing, which was RFK's appearance on ABC News, Michael, and them editing his appearance and then putting out a statement immediately afterwards about his COVID and vaccine and anti-vax disinformation. What was your take on that as a journalist?
I haven't seen that. I'm not even sure what you're talking about.
A 14-minute interview on ABC World News with RFK Jr. yesterday, talking about his campaign. And it got contentious. You'll have to take a look at it.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look. I haven't seen it, so I can't really comment.
Right, that's cool. You'll see it eventually. All right, so let me ask you this: Jack Teixeira, Massachusetts Air National Guard. The documents from the Pentagon that he leaked out, how is he different in any way than the Pentagon Papers and the leak by Daniel Ellsberg, in your opinion?
How is he different?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the ultimate result isn't particularly different in that it's the exposure of secret government documents that otherwise would have remained concealed. People try
Right, but I'm saying
try
the
to
Washington Post.
people try to claim that there are differences because he doesn't seem to have a well-defined or developed political motive as to why he did it, but that doesn't particularly matter as to the end result.
Right, but I mean, one person is jailed, the other one's feted by the same publications that actually helped to get him captured by the FBI, i.e., the Washington Post, New York Times. I mean, the it's almost like we're living in an opposite world at this point regarding these particular issues.
Well, they tried to jail Ellsberg, but there was prosecutorial misconduct.
Right, but he had front page support of the Washington Post and the New York Times. Was recently given an award in the state of Massachusetts from a college for being a whistleblower, while the same day before this kid was arrested in the same state. I mean, it just seems to be obvious to point out to a journalist what's going on here. I mean, it seems to be complete reversal of roles at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, clearly when the manhunt was launched to track down the leaker, it was the journalists who were leading the charge. Notwithstanding them using the documents for their own reporting purposes, which would seem to be a contradiction. But because Teixeira didn't approach any journalists as a traditional source, they clearly felt no obligation to, protect him from any kind of government scrutiny. And in fact, were the main proponents of nailing him as quickly as possible in concert with the FBI. I mean, it was crazy. That's what they viewed as their proper journalistic role, to coordinate with like Bellingcat and these other spook entities who operate under the auspices of journalism, who cared not a single shit about the actual content of the documents, but were interested solely in finding the perpetrator in that, meaning the leaker, so that he was no longer in a position to be able to jeopardize national security or something. Yeah, I mean, it's a total role reversal. Part of it has to do with, I think, just sheer partisanship. Yeah. I mean, if there was a leaker under Trump, there's no way that the leaker would have been so roundly villainized. Daniel Ellsberg happened under Nixon, so it's a similar situation.
Vindman under the during Trump, right? The Vindman whistleblower on Ukraine.
I mean, that was a different situation because it wasn't as though that person was leaking primary source material. That person was just making allegations.
Didn't he leak the phone call allegations between Zelensky and Trump? Was that Vindman who did that?
I think he submitted a whistleblower complaint, but it wasn't disseminated publicly. And then the transcript was released by the White House afterwards, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the chronology.
To vindicate themselves, though, I believe that was their move right. So you're not suggesting that if Teixeira had gone to the Washington Post as a whistleblower, they would have protected him, are you?
I think there would. It depends. I mean, I think if the Washington Post perceived him as a more traditional source,
right,
then there would have been a greater sense of obligation around protecting him as a source. But because it was done through a different method that didn't conform to what they would expect as like a standard source journalist relationship, then they just decided to deputize themselves as basically FBI assistant prosecutors or something.
What is a traditional source?
Yeah, what is a traditional source nowadays, Michael? Because it's crazy.
I mean, in the sense of somebody with classified material going directly to a journalist and then having that material disseminated through a standard editorial process, say at the Washington Post.
You're clearly referring to the source that gave Julian Assange the WikiLeaks emails.
Manning.
Sorry, what do you mean?
No. Are you referring to a traditional source like Bradley Manning?
Or Chelsea, whatever.
Well, no. I don't think Chelsea Manning was a traditional source either necessarily, which is why the media's had a very complicated relationship with Manning and Assange. It's a similar situation. I mean, just in the sense of, for example, when Jim Risen broke the story around the warrantless wiretapping under George W. Bush, right? That was him directly interfacing with a source who presented to him privately classified material, then Risen publishes it at the New York Times through a traditional editorial process. Risen clearly, I think, has then a relationship with the source that obliges him to protect the security of the source. Whereas because this information was just leaked, quote unquote, into the public domain, then the journalists don't feel any similar obligation, and in fact feel compelled to help the government identify and prosecute the leaker. So it's a similar.
Okay.
It's just a different set of circumstances. I'm not saying.
As a journalist, I don't know how I would be compelled ever to help the government prosecute a leaker.
Well, neither would I. Neither would I. I mean, it's absurd behavior.
Right.
I'm just explaining what their thinking is.
It's very strange. But let me ask you this: the House voted down Matt Gaetz's war power resolution measure on Somalia today. Apparently, he's got the squad on his side and some other Republicans. It seems like some strange bedfellows. They still lost, but what's your take on that situation?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen the final. What was the final vote tally on that? I think it was yesterday, right?
Yeah. It was.
Do you have the final number?
I don't have my fingertip.
What was the AI versus nay? I'll look at it, but it was something similar.
Yeah.
But it was. I mean, Gaetz had a similar resolution with regard to Syria maybe a month or two ago.
Right. Exactly.
And
my question is about the squad coming on board for Somalia, but not coming on board for Ukraine.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting because a year ago, a lot of the Progressive Caucus people, including some of the squad members, and even
CIA is on this call.
No, he's easy to target as he's moving on the Jersey Turnpike. He's easy to target as a victim. But there's a vote, Eric, on reining in the war powers. Trying to have an invoke a war powers resolution on Somalia is what I was referring to with Michael. And this was introduced by Matt Gaetz and has a bunch of conservative populist Republicans on one side, and also the Progressive Caucus of the Dems on their side. It's a strange combination.
You mean the last of the anti-war Dems?
Well, they're not, but it's not really, because it's also the squad, and the squad voted against
collectively.
Right, they voted for the Ukraine war. So I'm wondering which war is a good war for the left and which war is not a good war for the left, which is what I was going to ask Michael about, because there seems to be a difference in what war is worth it and what war is not for the progressive left, which used to be, I assume, like Michael, completely anti-war. But not,
right.
Yeah, that was where I was going with that line of questioning.
No, and hopefully he'll come back. I think he's in a very interesting spot.
Yeah.
Just listening to him, because I mean, I do believe he comes from the left. He worked with the Young Turks. So he's smart enough to leave the Young Turks. So I'm not going to poison him with that. But that would be an awkward position when you're like, well, everything's selective. Mm-hmm. I think that's the issue.
Hold on.
Hey, I'm back. I was just booted, I guess. Sure. You think that the U.S. would eventually develop the infrastructure where you could just have like a consistent phone conversation on like one of the most heavily trafficked roadways in the country? But
you sound great now. It's great to have you back. Let me ask you something. When you were trying to physically attack Ann Coulter and got arrested, what were you planning to do?
What are you talking? I'm not sure if you're joking or not. I mean, I don't
know if I'm joking or not. It says on Wikipedia that you were arrested for trying to attack Ann Coulter. I don't know anything about it, Michael.
I don't know. I haven't read Wikipedia lately, but that's just a complete lie. That never happened.
That's a great answer. Okay, I thought it was crazy too. But
no, complete lie. I mean, that never happened ever. I mean, that's ridiculous.
That's really great. Okay. So that's out. Maxine, What about Maxine Waters? Did you have a fist fight with Maxine Waters?
No, I didn't have a fist fight with her either. I mean, that's another thing. What is that on the Wikipedia too? I mean, I don't look at Wikipedia actually because it's just a feeding ground for haters to like try to put up the most what they think is the most discrediting little tidbits of information that they can find on you. Apparently,
Are they referring to anything that's true, Michael, or what? Are they
on the Maxine Waters thing? I mean, that there's something that happened in 2017 that people lost their minds over. Yeah, something happened. You want me to explain it?
Yeah, because I don't know anything about it.
Okay, yeah. So I actually was working for the Young Turks at the time, which was a strange little interlude I took.
Right.
I was in LA. That's when I lived in LA for a while, and I went to. It was a nationwide. They called it March for Truth. It was basically a pro Mueller investigation nationwide rally.
Okay.
It was these liberal advocacy organizations who nationwide were organizing rallies to demand the appointment of a special counsel and basically just trying to ratchet up pressure on Trump regarding Russiagate stuff. Okay.
Right.
And so I went to the one in LA and I interviewed a bunch of people there. You could go find the original footage on YouTube somewhere, I think.
Okay.
And I interviewed Waters. She had a totally deranged reaction to very benign questions of mine, started getting visibly angry.
Wow.
And she pushed my outstretched arm aside, which was holding a microphone to interview her. Right. And then I put out a tweet where the people kind of tried to maliciously construe as me alleging a violent assault, which of course I didn't allege. I never used that word at all, but it got totally blown out of proportion. And people to this day accuse me of falsely maligning Waters for having assaulted me, which I just never said. I mean, wow. She engaged in ridiculous behavior for elected officials. So I mentioned it at the time. I should have worded the tweet with a bit more clarity, but right. But that's what happened.
Wow, that was so. What? Anything with Ann Coulter? The same thing or no?
That was something from college. I didn't attack anyone. I mean, I don't really. I mean, it was that's 15 years ago at this point. So I didn't. But there was no attack involved at all. I mean, that's insane.
There's no restraining order or anything?
No.
Okay, I don't. I'm just reading it off the page. I don't know anything about it.
I was never charged. I was never charged with a crime. I mean, this is insane. I don't know that they still that they would have that on my bio. It's just ridiculous. It's just attempted a character assassination. That's all.
Okay, I had a feel. I just wanted you to clear the air yourself. I figured that.
I mean, I know Coulter. I mean, I've met Coulter actually within the past couple of years. We got along fine.
Okay, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. What is conscious abstention?
What is conscious abstention? Meaning what? Is this from Wikipedia too?
It's something that you said about the Bernie candidacy after Bernie was knocked out. I think I remember that you said his followers should practice conscious.
This is. I think this refers to so every election cycle. Yeah, I'll just give a little statement of disclosure as to what my own voting preference is or how I'm going to vote or not. And for the past several cycles, I've just characterized what I'm doing as conscientious abstention, meaning I'm not abstaining from voting out of apathy. I'm abstaining from voting for either candidate out of a whole set of what I think are rational reasons that I then explicate. So that's what that's
okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you, what's your take on this whole Tucker fiasco?
Well, it's a bit of a bummer for me because it means that I probably have no opportunity at all to get on national TV again.
I'm so sad because you're great with him. I like watching you and him. I like watching Glenn Greenwald with him. I like watching Jimmy Dore with him. But now none of us can watch anybody with him. What do you think happened here?
Yeah. I think my as best I can glean, and I don't have a ton of insider information, but the what I do know leads me to kind of bolster what had been my original hypothesis anyway, which is that it really comes down mostly to just kind of random corporate caprice and just kind of arbitrary machinations that really does not interact a whole lot with these kind of sweeping ideological or political explanations that people want to ascribe to it. I think it would just, it probably has to do with Tucker having accumulated a ton of autonomy within the organization that over time created some discord between him and the kind of corporate hierarchy there. And then, there was just basically a tipping point, I guess, within the past week or so. And then he was shown the door. I think that probably people who are searching for a more holistic explanation with like a really satisfying ideological overlay, I think are probably engaged in some wishful thinking. I think really the explanation probably is a bit more banal than that.
Well, the timing of the Dominion suit is why I think they're doing that, Michael, because there might have been a demand as a part of the settlement by Dominion. I mean, it's literally one day after that insane $750+ million settlement with Dominion that was about to go to trial, and they settled, and the next day Tucker's fired. So I mean, if it could be a coincidence, I guess.
Was that the next day or the following?
Yeah, Michael. Week? No, the next day.
Wait, he was fired on Monday, right? And the settlement was announced when?
Settled on Friday. He was fired on Monday.
Oh, okay.
That's why people.
It may have that. Yeah, I mean that may well have something to do with it, but I think that just goes to the corporate caprice angle, because if the discovery in the lawsuit entailed revelation of certain texts or whatever, where he's calling me, Fox corporate executives mean names, that just kind of adds to the drip for some time now, where there was a bit of consternation over his seeming autonomy within the organization, and so they just kind of,
the Dominion suit was
broke glass in case of emergency or something.
Yeah, I mean, the Dominion suit basically was about Fox harming their business, and that settlement, I think, led to literally 3 days later, Disney suing DeSantis in Florida for harming their business. Is this a new corporate libel method politically to undermine the political machinery?
I hadn't thought of that angle. I don't know if there's a connection with the Disney.
No, it's an angle I thought of myself. Right, it's an angle I came up with the other day, because again, timing is everything. Then I mean, look, I'm a conspiracy guy, but when timing is so blatantly obvious, it's hard for me to rule it out. Like Dominion and the settlement, Tucker being fired within 72 hours, it's a little much, Michael. It's a little much.
Well, no, I don't. I mean, I wouldn't just assume that the Dominion suit is completely irrelevant.
Okay.
I just think that whatever influence the Dominion suit had on the ouster of Tucker probably just relates to the kind of growing internal corporate consternation toward Tucker, rather than having some bearing on a more overarching kind of ideological or political antipathy toward Tucker that I think people want to repair to as the more satisfying explanation.
Look, I get Don Lemon. When your ratings are that low, you've got to go. But I don't understand how you take the highest rated news cable channel in America and say you got to go. For the corporate level to cut their own throats financially, is that typical of the corporations?
Well, that's exactly what they did to Tucker's predecessor. I mean, obviously, Bill O'Reilly and Tucker Carlson are not totally comparable figures in terms of their political orientation or anything, but O'Reilly was the #1 rated cable news host for like 15 years or something.
That had a sex scandal all over it, and loofers and a lot of sexual stuff attached to it. I don't know. This doesn't really.
But he was still a cash cow.
No. I agree, but I don't think they could make the sex scandal go away in the case of O'Reilly. I don't know what happened to Glenn Beck. I think he just went crazy. He was a cash cow too, from what I recall.
Well, yeah, exactly. So there's not always necessarily a perfect correlation between financial profitability and whether a corporate structure wants to retain the talent.
I agree. Well, let me ask something, changing the subject because Freeform Friday. How do we get out, or how does this end? Let me put it that way. How does this Ukraine war end, in your opinion, Michael? Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
I don't see any indication of an end happening in the remotely near future.
When you say remotely near future, what does that mean? 2 years?
I don't know. It's hard to really put a firm kind of time scale on it, but I'll just give you. Just as an anecdote, I was in D.C. this week in part because I went to a couple. I met with some people who were basically in D.C. to do lobbying on behalf of Ukraine stuff, like and for the pro-Ukraine cause, more or less, right?
Okay.
And anybody who thinks that because they see certain excerpts on Telegram where they think that there's like this widespread disillusionment within the Ukraine military toward either the U.S. or towards Zelensky or whatever, and therefore the resolve to keep fighting Russia has diminished, I think are totally deluding themselves. I think as the war continues,
yeah,
the attitudes get more radicalized and hardened and entrenched, and the sacrifices that are made in their minds cannot just be relinquished for some capitulation. So if anything, each day that the war continues, the more dug in they are to keep going. And if the U.S. posture remains just deference to Ukraine, meaning to the Ukraine government's imperatives, that's what at least the Biden administration claims is the posture. I think it's kind of a cop-out, but that's the publicly stated posture. Who they're deferring to is a government that is more radicalized than ever. And gets increasingly radicalized with each passing day, so that trajectory just continues forward, and so I don't see any prospect of an end. If Michael, as things stand out,
you're losing men 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 ratio. Who is going to fight your war for you? Don't you eventually run out of people?
Well, yeah, I think they're going to fight until
these numbers are off the charts, Michael. They've been losing a ratio to the Russians that are according to really sources that I respect, for over a year, an 8-to-1 ratio of Ukrainians to Russians dying.
I'm not so sure about the veracity of that particular ratio, but it almost doesn't matter. I mean, they're going to fight until they can't fight any longer. That they're in an existential.
It's kind of like the night during in the Monty Python sketch. I mean, at some point, there's nobody left to fight on your side, Michael.
Well, yeah, but so until they get to that point, it's going to continue. That's the point.
They're dragging in.
There are still reserves.
They're dragging in teenagers and older people to fight in the war. I mean, this is like Berlin in 1945,
or it's the United States in 1941. I mean, look up. This history has been buried, but look at how the FBI had to round up draft dodgers during World War II. Around 500,000 arrests.
That's a ridiculous comparison, bro. Come on.
It's true, though. I mean, look it up. 500,000.
That's a ridiculous
500,000 Americans who were trying to dodge the draft in World War II were rounded up and arrested and forced to fight.
A nation of 240 million. Let me ask you this. Is this the same as Mexico and the United States having a war and thinking that Mexico is going to win eventually, Michael?
I don't follow that analogy. I mean, how is that? What do you mean?
Well, okay, we'll say Canada.
That's a difficult
We'll say Canada. It's closer. Canada would probably be closer.
Yeah.
Canada and U.S. Yeah, I get it.
I mean, what they're hoping for ultimately, I mean, the aspiration is to somehow bring about regime change in Russia. Now, that could be a totally unrealistic aspiration, but that's the aspiration. So that's what they're going to keep working toward.
So to answer your own question, you see no end in sight, is what I'm saying.
Correct. I mean, the facts don't bear out an end being in sight.
Well, the fact that Zelensky got on the phone with the head of China yesterday, asking him to help them reach a peace deal, apparently you haven't read about that yet.
The peace deal that the Ukraine government promotes is the one that they released last December, which has a prerequisite for even beginning negotiations as the total expulsion of all Russian troops from Ukrainian territory. So if that's the quote peace deal that he's
what I'm saying
appealing to China to help facilitate, then it's a total non-starter and it's irrelevant.
Right, but it is relevant if you're Zelensky and calling up the head of China out of the blue after a year and a half saying, help us have peace, you would think that's not coming from a position of strength.
No, I think that actually is a bit of a position of strength, just to be able to have direct communication with China in the first place. Okay. I mean, and it's not out of the blue. Zelensky and other Ukraine government officials have been appealing to have communications with China for months, and since the beginning of the war, really. So it's not out of the blue.
Okay, tell me about Taiwan. As long as we have you on the phone, where is this going?
Well, I mean, this is almost even crazier to kind of contemplate.
Right.
You know, one of the things that I was at in D.C. this week, it was at the Hudson Institute, which is this extremely hawkish think tank.
and they're hosting a debate between this guy Elbridge Colby, who was a former Defense Department official under Trump, and the head of the Hudson Institute, who's this guy John Walters, who was in the Bush administration. And the debate was between whether or not the U.S. had to prioritize the allocation of resources in its military arsenal in the East Asian theater, or if no prioritization was necessary between Taiwan and Ukraine, and the U.S. could basically compete militarily without needing to necessarily siphon off resources from one theater or the other. So that was the debate, right? But what both sides presumed in their arguments was that the U.S. is already committed as a matter of policy and a matter of almost like faith, and there's no debate necessary. The U.S. is already committed to wage war against China on behalf of Taiwan. Like, it's already a foregone conclusion in their mind. They don't even think it's subject to debate.
Well, this is the neocon of Woodstock you stumbled into. But what's your take on it?
Well, my take is that assuming the inevitability of a U.S. war with China is absolutely out of this world lunacy. So
right, I'm not asking your position. I'm saying physically, where would this war be fought in your mind? On what planet? On what land? Or what ground? The ocean? Where? Outer space? Where would it be fought?
Oh, I mean, well, it would be nominally around Taiwan. I mean, that would be the theater. But the only reason that the U.S. would be fighting China in the theater of Taiwan is because the U.S. is gearing up to combat China potentially supplanting the U.S. as world hegemon. So it would happen within the vicinity of Taiwan, I would think. I mean, in the event of an actual incursion.
Well, this would be like having a war on Staten Island, Michael. So, I mean, the Ukraine was always set aside as a large landmass where you could have a World War II style tank war. That's been established for 30 years in military think tanks. Where is the actual war? And I don't know the answer to this, to be fought unless it's a naval battle war in the South China Sea, Michael.
Well, yeah, that would be part of it. I mean, that's what they're talking about. Look at what Congress did last week. They did a so-called war game in this select committee that the Republicans started up when they took the majority in the House, Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. So they had a war game where they played out what they think is going to be the scenario for a war breaking out. And yeah, it's a lot of naval warfare, but there's also there's also an amphibious invasion of the island that the U.S. is going to be involved in fighting as well. I mean, there are U.S. troops in Taiwan as we speak.
Right, I understand that. Let me ask you this: and this is just me and you talking, if the Chinese Navy encircles the island of Taiwan, what do you think would happen there?
I don't know. I mean, I could just go. I only can go. I mean, Joe Biden has said 4 times in public, including on 60 Minutes last September, that the U.S. is going to war with China if that happens.
I know. Right. I'm just trying to envision it. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's all I really can go by, right? I mean, and there's a bipartisan consensus as to that just being an inevitability, which is lunacy. But that's clearly the consensus in Congress, in the think tanks, even in the media, increasingly. So I can only go based on that.
Right. I don't know.
Again, I think the lunacy of that needs to be underscored. Right. That really would be, and there's no guarantee that it would be limited to Taiwan. I mean, in this war game scenario, they're claiming that China could launch a preemptive strike on Okinawa and Guam.
That's where I was going with
maybe even Hawaii.
Right.
And then what you'll have there is then, given the an alliance or quasi alliance between Russia and China, you would then have like kind of a merger in a sense between these two different theaters in Europe and Asia, which is disturbingly reminiscent of like what you would think of as a quintessential World War scenario. But people just are lurching toward that as though it's this foregone conclusion. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Right. What I'm saying is, if we're looking, which is what we've done for so many years, find a place to have a proxy war, Michael. That's why I was wondering, where is that place in this crazy scenario? Because Taiwan is so small, that couldn't be the place to have it. It seems like it can only be a naval theater battle war. You know,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that would be a big part of it. I mean, that's why the U.S. is rapidly militarizing the South China Sea. They're opening up new bases in the Philippines, including at the very northern tip, which is at the southern tip of the South China Sea, pointed directly at China. I mean, they just had the biggest joint U.S.-Philippine military exercise ever 2 weeks or so ago.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's what and that was clearly, supposedly, in the name of, quote, deterring China, but it could just as easily be, and probably is more likely to be, instigation or provocation of China. So they're behaving as though they're anticipating this as, again, something that is just written in stone as a foregone conclusion.
Well, is this because of the end of the Ukraine conflict and a pivot to South Asia? I mean, is this what's going, pivot to the South China Sea?
No, I don't get that sense. I think they're happening in tandem. I think they're sort of seen as part of the same continuum of conflicts. Okay. Especially given what seems to have been the solidification of the ratification of this Chinese-Russian sort of pact that was kind of codified by the visit of Xi in March to Moscow.
Right. Let me ask you this: how much, on a scale of 1 to 10? How much influence does Communist China, have on U.S. Domestic policy and foreign policy, if any? 1 to 10.
Well, lots. I would say 10 in terms of negative influence, and that's what everybody feels like now they're politically obliged to array themselves against. This idea that the Democrats are like in hoc to China, which you see some Republicans still try to claim, not as much anymore because they have to kind of acknowledge this bipartisan consensus that they've helped engender. Mm-hmm. But this idea that there's like this subterfuge happening where Chinese, communist officials are brainwashing Democrats and everybody to like support their interests. Do you see any evidence of that? It seems like there's been a dramatic shift against China that has really accelerated even just within the past couple months.
Well, is it similar to the dramatic shift against Russia?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are some parallels there. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. When you have Chinese
corporate influence,
right? When you have Chinese police stations in American cities, you think people should be nervous, Michael?
I think they should be nervous that they're being propagandized at this ridiculous notion of a Chinese police station. I mean, look into that indictment that was issued a couple of weeks ago, or whenever that was, around the supposed, quote, police station in New York City. And just tell me if that holds up.
There's no Chinese police stations in Paris. There's none in England, and there's none in Germany, and there's none in South America.
I know. I don't know. I haven't individually investigated every alleged Chinese police station in South America and Europe.
The idea of a Chinese police station doesn't seem to bother you. The fact that they would.
What police activity did they carry out in New York City?
I don't know. That's why I'm concerned when there's a police station in New York City.
How do you know it's a police station? Because the FBI told you?
No, I mean it was covered in numerous periodicals
and I'll tell you where the numerous periodicals got their information. It was because of one supposed study that this nonprofit put out last September called Safeguard Defenders. I interviewed the founder or the head of that nonprofit recently because they hide their funding. Okay, go on the website now, Safeguard Defenders. They're the ones who put out the report, and they spurred this giant frenzy that the media credulously covered around supposed Chinese police stations that are just popping up everywhere and threatening the sovereignty of our nation.
Okay, so you're saying it's untrue.
And well, I'm saying it's nowhere near the kind of established fact as people are trying to make it out to be. And then the FBI used this bogus report, which is chock full of errors.
It's not an editorial question. I'm just asking you, are there police stations run by the Chinese Communist Party in America's cities and in Toronto, in South America, and in Paris? I mean, it's either there is or there isn't.
I don't know about Paris or Toronto. I know the one in New York. That's the one I've looked into because that's what the FBI just for the first time brought supposed obstruction charges, not espionage charges. You think if they were running the secret quote police station in the middle of Manhattan, they would bring espionage charges or something to that effect against the supposed perpetrators of this espionage mission, but they didn't. They did this another dopey political entrapment thing like they did against Mike Flynn and so forth on Russiagate. Yeah. And nailed these kind of clueless, residents of Chinatown as though there's these bigwigs running some kind of police operation in New York. It's insane. It's a political prosecution obviously, but nobody wants to point that out because everybody has to be on board with this hysteria over Chinese subversion of our democratic way of life or something. I mean, it's idiocy. If people thought that was idiotic when it happened with Russiagate, I don't see why there's such a big difference in their minds pointing out the same kind of idiocy when they're doing the same sort of nonsense with regard to China. It's the same hysteria stoking around social media bots, around using all this tendentious logic that is meant to primarily just gin up fear and gin up support for security state machinations.
It could be
So
true,
all these people who claim to now be like these big skeptics of the FBI and CIA, for whatever reason, when those FBI and CIA and NSA, when they're involved in joining the kind of bandwagon to hype China as this existential threat, all that skepticism kind of gets deactivated for whatever reason. It seems bizarre to me.
Did Eric Swalwell have a deep state Chinese communist spy in his camp?
I don't know. I've heard that allegation. I'm not 100% sure on the facts of that. I would have to look into it more.
Okay, I think Eric might have a question for you.
Okay.
I wanted to follow up about the Chinese influence on the corporations, specifically through WEF and the disparate treatment, shall we say, of standards in China versus here. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Be more specific. I mean, I'm not. Can you? What's more?
BlackRock, other companies who are, making sure that diversity training comes into effect and things like that. At Apple, for example, who essentially said up yours, and they said no, we're investing in you. You're going to do this training, but we're not putting the same standards forth on China, or the same standards are not being put forth.
I'm sure there has been a discrepancy in the kind of standards that are applied, in part because of the profit incentive for a lot of these firms to make a lot of money in China. I don't deny that that's been the status quo for a long time. I just think that there's been this rapid, quote, decoupling that's been happening within the past few years and has really been accelerating just within like the past few months, where the trend line is clearly heading in another direction, to the point that the notion that there's this big, giant lobby that is somehow supplicating to China and trying to craft policy in relation to appeasing China, that's just not what the policy trajectory is at the moment.
You're talking about an above board public lobby, right?
Of course.
I'm talking about in every observable respect. I mean, just look at what Congress is doing in March and April of this year. I don't know that the Republicans have really focused on a whole lot else other than ginning up a panic around China, and they've been vindicated because the Democrats have been happy to get on board. I mean, where's the skepticism toward this bipartisan war fervor that people would rightly have with regard to Russia? But for some reason, when it's directed at China, it's like good. What?
Yeah, it's inexplicable to me. But moving to a related question, can anybody beat an incumbent this election cycle, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible.
On what planet does Biden lose this election, in your opinion? How does this work?
I mean, I think the incumbent's definitely going to be favored, but it's the economic forecast, I think, is uncertain. So you would probably need a bit of a downturn in the economy. Right. You probably need. I mean, I think you probably would need a bit of an external effect on something that would.
You mean like his death or cognitive dysfunction or what?
Well, yeah. I mean, that would obviously be a big deal. I mean, I think.
Well, I mean, it could be an LBJ situation also, where he pulls out and then it's a free form fight to the death among everybody. That's not out of the question.
Yeah, sorry, I'm screaming in a rest stop right now.
No, I mean, he could slightly have deteriorating health 7 months from now, Michael, and then pull out, and then it's okay.
I think that's right. I mean, I think clearly he's on a steep age-related decline, and if that becomes so impossible to ignore that even like Democratic partisans can't pretend that doesn't concern them anymore.
That's what I meant.
Then, and especially if the thing becomes like a referendum on Kamala Harris, I mean, I think that's horrible for Democrats. So.
Right. But I mean, Kamala Harris has a lot of support in the Democratic base, Michael.
I don't know about that. She did horribly in the. Oh, are you being sarcastic? Okay, yeah.
No,
I mean,
I'm not being
yes.
sarcastic at all. I
No,
think
but-
her approval rating from Black Democratic women is in the high 80s.
Oh, maybe so, but I mean, she did horribly in the Democratic primaries in 2020. She completely floundered. She was being hyped as even the front runner at one point by Nate Silver and people, and her campaign collapsed. And she was only,
I'm not using that as a referendum. I'm just saying that her support in the Democratic Party among the base of the Democratic Party is very strong.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think she'll have a generically high approval rating among Democratic voters.
Right.
But
Well, no, it's not among voters. It's not among voters. It's among a specific group of voters.
Among self-identified Democrats, right?
No, it's Black women self-identified Democrats.
Okay, I mean, so be it. I don't know what's the point.
No. The point is that they can't really throw her under the bus because she's such an icon in the Democratic Party that she cannot be replaced, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I mean, I think you're probably right about that. I don't see her being replaced, and I do think, in the event that there is some reason why Biden has to bow out, she's almost certainly going to be the nominee, which I think
That's
horrible.
Horrible.
I mean, if I had to pick a scenario that would be the most disadvantageous to Democrats in 2024, that would be it.
That was where I was going with it, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. Anyway.
What about Democratic debates this session? Will there be for primary debates?
Sorry, say it again.
What about primary debates on the Democratic side?
What about them?
They're
not going to happen.
Will Biden leave the basement?
I think it's incredibly unlikely that will happen.
Right.
I mean, just like, Trump technically had some primary challengers in 2020 among Republicans, but there was no chance in hell that they're ever going to hold any primary debates. That happens always happens with incumbents.
Wasn't there 17 people standing on a stage with Trump?
Not in 2020.
Oh, right. Okay. But will Biden debate presidentially or no?
You mean in a primary or in the general election?
No, in a presidential debate. Will he debate presidentially?
Oh, yeah. For the general election, I think he almost, I can't imagine him not.
Either can I, but I can't imagine him doing it either. So I'm stuck.
Well, I think, especially if it's Trump, he'll have a whole lot of cushion to kind of explain why his performance makes it so necessary to ensure that, there's not another insurrection, which means that you have to vote for even a potted plant against Trump.
Right. When do you think these people in the insurrection jail will be let out of jail, in your opinion?
I don't know. I haven't followed up on that recently.
Okay. When you interview them, what did they tell you?
It varies by defendant.
So I think like the minority of defendants who were accused of actual violence probably are going to be in there for the long run.
Right. Violence meaning what? What was the violence? Breaking the windows or killing the cops?
Whatever tussle they're accused of engaging in with the Capitol Police.
Right.
Yeah. All right, guys. I have to.
Okay. Michael, this is great.
Okay.
I hope we could do it again. I love talking to you, bro.
Yeah. Happy to do it. And take care.
Thank you, bro.
All right. Thanks. All right. Bye.
That was interesting.
Yeah. The chat loved it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, they want Michael back every week.
Oh no, bring Michael back. We need to interview Michael some more. I love that guy. That's great.
I'd love to do it on video though. I think that having
I know.
No video kind of did that.
But he's done a lot of videos, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind.
Sure.
If we can get him on a stable feed, that he wouldn't mind doing video. I mean, he was on Tucker a bunch of times, and I hope
the chat's screaming, "No!"
What? Don't bring him back, or what?
The chat is not happy. I was being sarcastic.
Oh.
they're not big fans. But anyway, sorry I got dumped. The hotel decided that I didn't have internet anymore, so
Oh,
I am
weird.
now
Oh,
on a Wi-Fi unit for internet.
okay.
Definitely want to get through whatever super chats there are and things like that.
I wanted to ask him
people
about the Real
don't leave.
Housewives of New Jersey. We'll get it the next time.
I had people screaming, dude. You have no idea.
Oh, okay. I
Just
don't know
looking
what's
at the
going on
chat.
over there.
Yeah,
I like talking to him. I think he's a very smart guy.
Well, I think that people are frustrated, but it's important to talk to a journalist, and he's closer to a journalist than anything you're going to see on mainstream media.
Right.
At least he's answering challenges, things like that, and I think it's important that we talk. What are you thinking? What is your philosophy?
Yeah,
Where
no,
are you coming from?
I was trying to
And-
be as intrusive as I could and fair, and dig into his head.
yeah,
I hope
Yeah,
I hope people got satisfied with some of the answers he gave. I don't know about satisfied, but I mean just satisfied that he did not dodge those questions.
yes, and definitely a credit to him. And
Yeah.
honestly, folks, he is not a right wing guy. Okay, he is the traditional Glenn Greenwald camp. He's one of those Matt Taibbi. They run in a similar circle.
Well, he's been referred to as a left heretic, if that helps at all. So a heretic.
Well, they all are now.
Well, I mean, in that Glenn Greenwald,
Yeah.
Jimmy Dore school, I think we might have gotten the same answers out of Max Blumenthal, Blumenthal, or Mate or Jimmy Dore.
Absolutely, and the thing is that we're only seeing them. And I do want to point out, I think that Jimmy Dore knows very well that a lot of his audience is from the right, and he is being selective in his topics of free speech, anti-Ukraine, anti-COVID stuff, and that's very helpful. But if you go and have an entire conversation like you are doing right now, a lot of people are going to go bonkers because it doesn't line up. And that's why I apologize, Chet. Yes, obviously you're smirking a little bit, but
who, me?
No, I was smirking.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody said, "How dare you, Taibbi? Watch him." He is like Taibbi, okay?
Right.
They're in the same circle. Trust me, they know each other.
It's the same
They're
people.
friends.
Yeah.
And
that's why I jumped on him this morning, because he is one of the leaders of the anti-war left. So to go after this anti-war candidate, as RFK Jr. professes to be, for his vocal disability, I thought was a cheap shot. That's a cheap shot.
Yeah, and that was weird. Now, okay, here we go. Somebody say, sorry, Eric, if you bring him back, give him a warning. He's not in the same class as the other. Yes, he is.
He is.
And this is the problem.
God.
He absolutely is in the same class.
Right.
They select their topics to tailor they're framing what they're saying. They know damn well what their message is. Russell Brand, too. Keep talking. I promise you'll go, wait a minute, this guy's a communist, because he is.
He says he's a Marxist, Russell Brand. He's an avowed Marxist. I mean, by his own admission. So I mean, his new movie, Get Me to the Kremlin on Time, I think is going to reveal that. But seriously, I was trying to be, putting on my journalist hat there with another journalist and trying to dig down, and you could see he was starting to squirm on some of these answers, because there really is no answer for them. The idea that the Ukrainians have not lost 8-1 casualties to the Russians. This is coming out of the United Nations. I mean, this is coming out of reliable sources for over a year, Eric. This is not some conspiracy theory. I mean, this is coming out of really, newspapers and other sources. I'm not making this up. The question is, how do you answer that? And he didn't really have an answer, saying it was not true. He simply said.
Yeah, well, he's in that same
thing with the Chinese police stations. He just said they're not true. I mean, that seems to be their answer to a lot of different questions that we already have answers for. They then catch up like 2 years later as if they discovered it themselves, like the cure for cancer. This seems to be a pattern. Not to lump him into that, but the mainstream media seems to say that we are conspiracy theorists. Then 2 years later, they claim to have discovered or uncovered the same thing we were talking about.
It turns out it is the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah, that's another example. There's hundreds of those examples, hundreds of them.
Sure.
You know, so the idea that there's not Chinese police stations around the world in these major cities, when there are, I'm sorry, that dog's not going to hunt. You know, the idea that the Ukrainians are not taking teenagers and older people to fight in this war by simply saying there was 50,000 draft dodgers in the U.S. in 1941 is not an answer.
No, I totally agree. But he's on the path. Like Taibbi is now an independent.
I was there. You're
Just,
talking to someone who was there. I was them 7 years ago. That was me. Mm-hmm. That's why I know them so well. I was there. Now I'm here with you today for reasons I can't explain.
And they bring you shame every minute. It's okay. It's okay.
I didn't bring the glasses. I have the Ziggy glasses that I got, and I wanted to thank her. We drank from them last night. At the end of the show, I want you to show the glasses. They're really nice.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I can't right now. I didn't bring them up.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're in DC. I'm sorry. Did you bring the dog?
What? Would I bring Oswald?
Bravo, my friend. Touche.
Oswald's my emotional support animal.
Right. You bought him a ticket. I love that. You bought him a ticket on the plane. That's crazy, Eric.
I know. And then people protested. They're
right,
like,
because somebody wanted their kid to sit next to their family. And Eric said, that's my support dog. I'm sorry. The kid started crying.
Yes.
It's all over YouTube
exactly.
right now, folks.
Yeah, look it up. It's like Maxine Waters.
Yeah, I mean, those questions were quite real. I didn't make those up. I mean, the Ann Coulter one, the Maxine Waters one. I mean, I don't know what a legitimate source is now for a whistleblower, and apparently nobody does. You know, if you don't turn yourself over to the Washington Post, they deputize themselves and go after you. Crazy.
Here's the point, and Mark and I, you and I have talked about this offline, but the fact is, he still is trying to hold a path back, like Alex Berenson.
Yep.
Taibbi was.
Yep.
I think he's given it up. I'm echoing. Hold on. All right. Hopefully that cleared it. Anyway, he's not ready to just say, boom, you've cut it off. You're like,
I'm done.
Hell with everybody. I'm
done.
I'm a right wing.
No. I went full David. I'm David Horowitz.
Right.
The Panthers didn't kill my secretary, but I ended up as David Horowitz. And that's where I am now politically for a number of years. But I was them. I worked for the Village Voice. I was an investigative reporter for the left. I know what goes on in that world. That's why I hope that I'm more effective than some others, because I come from there and I'm able to predict election results based on nothing but gut instinct and knowing how these cats are going to act. And I have nothing else but my instincts of being with them for so many years, Eric. And so far, so good. I mean, I think I could be helpful to the new cause.
Michael Tracey, Young Turks, Jimmy Dore, Young Turks, Dave Rubin,
Young Turks.
Yeah. And they're all in a path here. So I'd say Dave
There's something
Rubin's
about the Young Turks.
Right.
There's something about the Young Turks that catapults you into the right. I'll tell you that much. Once you get on the Young Turks with that nut. Yeah, once you get with Cenk, that just go, I can't live with this guy anymore.
No. Anna.
Oh, the other one.
Never mind Cenk.
How about that guy? How about that cat, Ryan Grimm on the Hill? How about that guy? There's another one.
Oh my God, he's the one that the Intercept that slimed Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah,
I mean he's like deep stater personified. He's like a horror movie.
Sometimes people's personalities match their names, right? Like Ryan Grimm. There was a guy, and I have a theory going back many years, just one of my comedy theories, that you can have a name that turns you gay when you're a kid, right? You'll end up gay based on your name. There was a president of GLAAD for a number of years, and his name was Jeff Seaman. And I thought to myself, of course he's the president of GLAAD. His name is Jeff Seaman. What else would he be doing? Anyway.
Well, what about Wiener, dude? And he doesn't even bother. He should have said no.
Right. Like
it's an old German name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on.
Wiener's another one. But
it's like, well, it's preordained by birth.
Right.
Somebody said Marion. Hey, how dare you ask John Wayne?
That's funny. Well, what do you got over there, Hunley? You got any comments or anything? Or
I do. Okay, let me see. Lady Freddie said not on Rumble. We were on Rumble. I did confirm it.
Okay.
People over there are just as annoyed or more so.
Why?
They're not fans of Michael Tracey. I think they like his.
Wasn't he on Sidebar with Barnes and Viva?
Was he?
Yeah, I think he was on Sidebar.
He could have been. I don't recall if he was or not. I don't remember.
I thought so. I mean, I know he was on Tucker a bunch of times because I saw him on Tucker, and I.
Right.
Yeah.
But let me see. We've got a Rumble rant here from Bulgadari. Eric's audio is echoing. Zelensky was the leader.
Look, again, it's like Robert Kennedy's voice. It's like Robert Kennedy's voice. You know, it's so obvious that come on. It's crazy. That's crazy.
What are you gonna do? Let me see here. We've got Carlito Briganti. Have you ever read FBI agent Don Adams' book From an Office Building with a High-Powered Rifle?
Never read it, but of course you're talking about Agent 86 from Get Smart, Don Adams.
No, I'm sitting here. I was wondering.
You know, Chief, we have to use the cone of silence. The regulations insist we use the cone of silence. Hey, there's a break in the action here when we're going to do the Blues Hero of the Day. This is a big one, Eric. This is a huge one. This is Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
One of the icons of the blues out of Texas, who was an influence to T-Bone Walker, among other people. Let me just give you a little read on this thing. The legendary Jefferson, successful recording debut in 1926, launched the vogue for country blues before his mysterious death in 1929, where he may have been poisoned by his wife or had a heart attack and died in the snow. He recorded 85 sides, mostly for Paramount, as I recall, established himself as the most popular blues guitarist of his era, a native of Wortham, Texas, among other places. He worked as a street singer and visited several states in the course of his travels, an offbeat guitarist known for his free phrasing patterns. He was one of the most inspired singers found in the blues. Also had numerous styles, played in numerous places around the country, and was an influence on everybody. He wrote a song and performed a song called Matchbox Blues, which was later recorded by an unknown group called the Beatles after Carl Perkins had made it a hit of Matchbox Blues. That is Blind Lemon Jefferson, today's hero of the blues. Thank you.
All right. And by the way, while I'm going through super chats and I'll go to tips, etc., the super chats don't stay in StreamYard unless I star them and put them on a side. So when I got knocked offline, there could have been a super chat and I might have missed it. If I did, I apologize. It's a technical issue.
That's crazy, Hunley.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
It might be, but I do want to explain it because
when you meet Mike Tyson, you have to do Mike Tyson when you meet him. That's crazy, Hunley. That's really crazy. I don't know how you got that. Anyway,
last guy who decided to do that shit with Mike Tyson got his ass whooped on an airplane.
I don't know about that, but I did want to recommend two movies this weekend. One of them is called Green Inferno, which I saw last night. And this movie is a bunch. The reason I'm recommending this is because of the plot of the movie. It is, hold on. It is from Eli Roth, the horror director from Blumhouse. Green Inferno, the plot of the movie is a bunch of climate change activists go down to South America on a climate change mission in Peru and encounter a tribe of cannibals. I'll leave it at that. It is fun because the climate change people have some problems with the cannibals. Okay, that's one movie of the weekend. The second movie I'd recommend is because of the RFK Jr. vocal kerfuffle is the King's Speech, which I'm going to look at. I haven't seen it in a long time here. Fantastic movie, 1939, The King of England, with an incredible speech impediment, goes on the radio to motivate the British people to fight back against the Nazis, to indicate that you can have a speech impediment and still be a great leader. And people pointed out that I was retarded because the King of England did not lead the nation of Great Britain. However, there was a man named Winston Churchill who had an amazing speech impediment as a stutterer who did. So take that, MFs.
And yeah, the king was still there, but anyway, okay.
Right. No. But both of them had a speech impediment, both Winston Churchill and the King of England. And so does, in a way, it's not a speech impediment. Robert F. Kennedy has that medical disorder.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the King of England, you got to give him some respect too, because he was not going to be king. His whole life, he was never going to be king. He literally, his brother went off the deep end, found himself the Meghan Markle of the day with Wallace Simpson, and abdicated his crown. And so all of a sudden, you have a guy here who couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. He's the king.
Yeah,
and he kind of had to.
And he's got to go do. He's got to do the YouTube channel of the day, which was that radio show out of London. I mean, that was like asking a guy, with an impediment or a speech or a facial disfiguration to do YouTube, who was a leader. I mean, not unlike Churchill. Don't forget FDR is in a wheelchair. You want to talk about disabled leadership? I mean, this attack on RFK Jr. for his vocal situation is really outrageous. It really is. Especially when these people, not Michael Tracey, obviously, but many of them supported Lurch to become senator of Pennsylvania. And Lurch quickly goes into a mental institution as soon as he gets the job. I mean, and now you're going to criticize a guy because you don't like the sound of his voice? For the love of God. I mean, come on, people. Come on.
By the way, going back to your first movie recommendation, I don't know why, but it popped in my head. Are you familiar with what happened with Michael Crichton?
I'm not familiar with that with Michael Crichton, but this movie is kind of like a Blair Witchy cannibal Holocaust type movie, but I don't know about Michael Crichton.
No, I was talking about the climate activism stuff.
Oh, no.
Michael Crichton wanted to write a movie or book essentially about the worst disaster in the world. It was totally environmentalist, blah, blah, blah. So he said, okay, I'm going to go find the worst thing out there. Chernobyl. Cool. And then when he looked up Chernobyl, none of the numbers added up. It completely changed him. Yeah. And his book, State of Fear, came out, and he became, I'm not going to say an anti-climate guy, but he became much more of a realist.
A lot of that.
Chernobyl.
Yeah, a lot of it was anti-Soviet propaganda. If you look at the HBO series, which was made by the British, once again, complete piece of propaganda movie series, the Chernobyl series by HBO, which I think is a BBC production. Many inaccuracies, many propaganda points in that show. So keep that in mind, people, when you see something like that.
And I highly recommend it if anybody has a chance, because he also came up with Gell-Mann amnesia, which is one of my favorite terms.
What is that? What is
it? Gell-Mann amnesia, as he put it, he named it after his friend Murray Gell-Mann, who is a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, so people would pay attention to it.
Right.
And essentially, it's a case of, let me say, I work in IT, for example, or I do computer stuff, and I read an article and I go, this is bullshit. They don't know what they're talking about. It's wrong.
Yeah.
But then I read another article on another subject and I just believe it, hook, line, and sinker. And the Gell-Mann thing is, you have to have the realization that if they don't know what they're talking about on your subject, then they very likely.
I'll give you a great example of that. I'll give you my first example of that ever. Frontline, the famous PBS series Frontline, did a 2-part series on who is Lee Harvey Oswald 12 years ago. And I watched this thing with my jaw hanging open because I believed in Frontline, right? But I knew the truth. I knew the factual stuff in this particular case. And he came out to be the lone assassin, according to Frontline, this 2-part series, which has tons of lies, tons of bullshit. I never watched Frontline again. That was done. That was it. I couldn't believe it. Same thing with 60 Minutes, which I left a long time ago. But the Frontline thing was, again, the director was British. It was the British do propaganda better than any country in the world in documentaries. That is their superpower. We're not as good as the British, because they can come in with the London Symphony, with a great narrator, and you'll see it work in a lot of different British documentaries. Their main enemy has always been their Russophobe fear of the Soviet Union, and now it's Russia, but that's a separate story. But when I watched the two-part Who is Lee Harvey Oswald, and I saw how many intentional lies were in there by Frontline, I was flabbergasted at the time, because I believed Frontline like an idiot. Then I thought about all the other Frontlines.
Also, the British, we have an inferiority complex, and we give an automatic 10 IQ point increase if they have a British accent, just in our nature.
We have that in documentary filmmaking too. We have that in documentary filmmaking. Theirs has gravitas. Their documentaries have gravitas. That's when you see Sexual Slaves of London,
Lena
by Elena Hutchinson. You give it more weight than you would if it was made by some nut in Mississippi, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the British have gravitas because of that phony Anglophile crap.
Now, here's the irony, too. Do you realize that their accent is put upon? If you look at Tangier Island, which exists, they speak closer to actual Americans and British from 150, 200 years ago, because their accents are identical. And if you listen to really old recordings, like around the turn of the 20th century, you can't tell the difference. Americans and Brits sound the same. They put on an affectation over time. So they kind of built their own little propaganda. They're brilliant.
Right. Well, I mean, Ringo told me that, he would be looked down upon as a teenager because of his Liverpudlian accent. I mean, there's also a class structure based on accents there. And we kind of have it here in the United States with the Jersey accent and some other accents around the country geographically. We have it, but not like the British have it. Not like they have it. There, it's really a classist situation based on regional accents.
And not only that, I had no freaking idea. Talking to Mark Bowden, I think he said that there's a new accent like every 15 or 20 miles. Like
well, the smaller the country, like I said to you, right? Like I said to you before, I can discern, and I'm not alone. I can discern accents based on boroughs in New York. You know what I mean? I can. That's why I was trying to explain that to Michael Tracey about the difference. I didn't get anywhere with that one, but the difference between Bernie Sanders' heavily Jewish Brooklyn, South Brooklyn accent compared to Donald Trump. It's an enormous difference to the New York ear. And I can tell you're from the Bronx. I could tell if you're from Staten Island. I could tell if you're from Queens. And I'm not alone in that. And that's a small geographical mileage too, Eric. Because neighborhoods are isolated communities. Despite being close to another neighborhood, it doesn't mean you go there. There are people in Brooklyn when I was growing up who never went into Manhattan in their lives. And I would just go, what? And they go, yeah, just no reason to go in. I've been here, 41 years. I've never had to go into Manhattan. You just, and they sounded like
everything I need here. What do I need?
Right. No, but their accents were regionalized and entrenched because they never left their own geography. And I think that's on steroids in England.
Yep. Yeah. I had no idea, because I'm thinking, when we go to the South, it's like, no, they have plenty. Go listen to Yorkshire sometimes and listen to half of these. Let me go ahead. South Texas gal. I got
Speaking
a fever.
Of regional accents.
More ice.
Yeah. I got a fever and the prescription is more.
You want your ice?
I don't have any ice today. I don't know what happened here. I was in a hurry. I didn't get the ice.
That's funny. Michael Banning is a new member. Thank you very much. Dustin, what did you do now? Oh, wow. It's just a normal comment. I'm disappointed, Dustin. Guy's phone connections and impairment. His point should be ignored. By the way, I will say that the phone was sharp sounding and he sounded more hostile because of the technology, I think, than he was actually saying. And
I don't think so.
That's not quite right.
I don't think. I think he got hotter as it went on.
So you're saying he knows you? So you're saying he actually does know you?
No. But I know the accent of Jersey, and that it was rising as the interview went on. He was becoming more and more aggravated and agitated. He was becoming more of a Jersey guy, like a Bill Maher as the interview continued, in my humble opinion.
All right. Michael Banning, super sticker. Thank you very much. CP Clapper, Ukraine proxy war is Operation Barbarossa 2.
Yeah, that's a good, interesting.
What is this? Jesus? Okay, I guess that's Jesus. CCP has police stations in countries to monitor Chinese communities to make sure they don't speak against the party.
Right.
Articles on this going back to 20. That
absolutely,
was
absolutely correct.
That he was so denial.
Oh, he was emphatic about that. He was emphatic. It's not a new story. It's an older. That's why I was so comfortable telling the story. It's not new. It's not like something that appeared in the Daily Mail last week.
And I think those are the points that are so startling because you go along, you're like, yeah, and then you hear, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah,
you're going to die on that hill?
I know.
That would seem non-controversial, and
I know,
but that happens. It is odd as you're exploring these.
It's like that laptop story. What's this here, Mark? You just gave a master class in congenial baiting. Yeah. That's funny. That's funny.
Oh, some people are upset. No, you just word of the day.
Well, no, we've moved on to the blues. You know, like I said, we've now got the blues hero of the day, Blind Lemon Jefferson. When I was playing the blues, my blues nickname was Blind Mississippi Driveway. So I just want to put that out there that we all have a blues name, and mine was Blind Mississippi Driveway.
I probably don't even want to know.
It's a joke, Hunley.
Yeah, obviously. Treasure Hunter 100. I've worked over 32 years in the semiconductor industry, and Israel is building Intel chip fabs at this very moment. So Taiwan is not the only one.
Well, they see the handwriting on the wall, right? But they see the handwriting on the wall about these chips, because if Taiwan gets into a skirmish, the chips are going to get cut off, and they're already not having too many chips floating around as it is. So it's just a market share thing by Israel. It's pretty smart, actually.
Well, Israel is top bleeding edge of anything tech. And that's just simply, in my opinion, because they're a small country, and to defend themselves, they need to do Stuxnets and other things like that. They're the ones who crack iPhones. They're going to have chip fabs. They've got to do all that because that's a way to leverage their size, is to have better tech. I mean, it just seems obvious to me. Busha Bendaloo, Eric and Detective Mark Groubert, I appreciate what you do.
Detective Groubert to you. I hope I wasn't too harsh on the guy. What, Eric? You know what I mean?
No, you were cool. We got to the point where nothing was going to get resolved about the Kennedy speech.
Right. Okay.
Bill,
it was going around circles. Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, it was cool, especially when we can get going. I wonder if these Chinese police stations offer retirement, vacation, sick time, and a take-home car. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Eric is echoing this. Probably Mark's fault.
I would blame myself for that personally. I'm going to have to deal with that. But yeah, we're going to see, like, instead of like LAPD, we're going to see a show on ABC called Chinese PD, where they run around the cities arresting dissident anti-communist Chinese at one point.
I think it's a good idea. Dig up anything new on the Las Vegas?
No, there's really nothing we could do about it. I mean, I kind of made as much information as I can. I put out there about the Saudis and the royal family and the purchase of those jets and Mandalay Bay, them owning the floor there. I mean, I don't know what else you could do. There's a lot of dots that I really can't connect, so I just put them out there.
Yeah, let me see. Anthony Teoramina with a very generous super chat. Thank you. Mark and Eric, did you hear about Bill O'Reilly's new book? It talks about the Amityville horror paranormal activity during filming.
It's called. I'm sure it's called Killing Amityville, which would be really funny.
I was wondering about that.
I mean, if you read his Killing Kennedy book, it's like, cliff notes for a JFK assassination buffs in a bad way. It's like Reader's Digest condensed version of of Oswald acting alone. I
did have to laugh. I think Jimmy Dore was talking about Bill O'Reilly's appearance with Chris Cuomo talking about his next book, Killing Tucker.
That's funny. I meant to
I thought
ask
it was
him where he
pretty
thought
good.
Tucker was going to go. I guess he had no idea, Michael, about where Tucker was going to land, but he seemed to think it was all a coincidence that Tucker got fired. But I made him think a little bit because of Dominion, which is what I wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting situation.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Especially the way they're doing him dirty, because essentially Tucker is not fired.
Right.
Tucker
I
still
know.
works for Fox.
I know.
So he is benched. They have benched him, and that's why he put out that tweet video that was so cryptic, because he can't say shit.
Right.
So they boxed him in until he can wiggle his way out of the contract. Now, his lawyer is Brian Friedman. And Brian Friedman worked for Megyn Kelly and got her $30 million. Brian Friedman works for, guess who else?
Who?
Chris Cuomo.
Ooh.
Chris Cuomo, who happened to have Bill O'Reilly.
Oh, I think he works for
talking
Don
about
Lemon, too. I think he's got Don Lemon.
Yes, he does. He works for Don Lemon, but hold on. Check this out. Worked for Kevin Spacey.
Oh, interesting. That case was retired so quickly, you can make your head spin. The jury came back in 5 seconds.
No, I don't think it was then. I think it was earlier 2017 stuff.
Oh,
I don't think
okay.
it was the recent, but yes, worked with Robert Downey Jr. But I just think it's very interesting that Megyn Kelly broke the story that Tucker Carlson, in fact, is still working for Fox and is trapped by the contract, so he can't say anything. And she happened to share the same lawyer as Tucker Carlson.
No, that's okay. I
course,
mean, I don't care if that's her source. It's fine. You know, I mean, I don't care. It's not.
No, I mean, that's smart.
They're not the nuclear codes,
Tucker.
Eric. It's not the nuclear codes. I mean, she. You know, if she.
No,
got
I think it's good.
Yeah. I agree.
I'm just saying that Tucker is obviously, with his lawyer, they're working to get the narrative out there. He can't talk. Megyn can talk.
Right. Well, it could be that
talk.
he's got a no-touch contract of his editorial that they violated too. You know what I mean? Like this is going to have to be resolved by attorneys, because he may have walked on their contract, but they may have violated his contract. You know, by saying we're going to, you know, he may have an editorial control, is all I'm saying, over his content. Which I
agree. But
I think when he did the Fox Nation thing, that was part of his deal to take less cash, was to have that money go into those many documentaries he's made for Fox Nation, Eric. I think that was part of the trade-off. The question is, who owns those documentaries? Because there's quite a few of them that he did. And where do they go? Where do they end up? Do they stay on Fox Nation? Are they his? You know, there's a lot of legal questions here.
Well, Fox Nation is now going to be CNN Plus. I thought Tucker Carlson.
No. But I'm talking about the docs that Tucker made. You know, does he own those docs?
Probably not. I bet they're work product.
Oh, we'll see what happens. I mean, you know.
Right.
I love that that Michael thinks that the January 6 people, you know, the violent ones, they get the longer terms. The violent ones in January 6th, Eric. The ones the murderers and the other ones, the non-trespassing murderers.
I wanted to ask him about Jacob Chansley then, because it's like, well, wait a minute, he was the face of it all.
Yeah. He was the most violent leader. He was the Jerry Rubin of the right.
And can I point out, though, that Tucker won't be getting any more of them out?
Any what?
He's not going to be getting any more QAnon shamans out. He's not going to get any more January 6 people out.
Oh, well.
Just pointing something out.
That's dark. I know. Well, he's done so much.
But it's true.
He did so much for it. They turned over those January 6 tapes to him, you know, through the House committee, and he got them on the air very quickly.
No, I credit to him. I'm just saying that's yet another reason to get his ass on a bench.
Oh, no. I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
So
it's all a conspiracy, though. If you ask the other side, none of it is intentional. There's nothing intentional ever. Keep that in mind from the other side. Everything's a coincidence, Eric. Check Shreveport attorney Maroon 63. I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, that sounds like
I love when they give you no information. They expect you to just drop everything you're doing. Some guy mentioned Maroon 63. I'm on it. I think I'm late. What the fuck is wrong with me? Look, Holbrook, you got to drop what you're doing and come to the show, Holbrook. I mean, this is crazy with you every week. Stop
I know,
milking
I
your
know.
cows. Stop milking your cows at 2 PM and come to the show.
Exactly. We had a guest on earlier.
We haven't had a guest
David
who we couldn't
Morgan.
see. We had a mystery guest. We couldn't see the guy.
No, and then he puts MT down. That was kind of annoying.
That's
like,
helpful.
Dude, can you write your name, please?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Whatever. Oh God. Can I give you more details on? Michael Crichton has a couple of lectures on YouTube. I really recommend go check them out because he breaks down everything. How the numbers didn't. I mean, the numbers didn't add up.
Notice that was from England, by the way.
Yeah.
That was from England.
Was it English? I thought it was in Europe.
Yeah. Take a look.
All right. Anyway, but I recommend everybody check that out because I'm just generally talking about. He gives the full numbers. It's shocking because we're talking. You think Chernobyl, and you're like, oh my God, there lost 20, 30,000 people, and I think it was like 70.
Yeah,
and obviously,
it was less than that. It was less than that.
Yeah, it was just so small numbers. You're like, wait a minute, what? Are you kidding? But anyway, Sparty Matt, love you guys. Making less NPCs in the world, one stream at a time.
What's NPCs?
Non-player character.
What?
It's
I've never heard of that. What the hell is that?
It's a term that comes out of a role-playing game, and it's
with the furries, like the big furries.
No, let me explain it. Just bear with me.
Sorry, I even brought it up.
You go on an adventure, right? But then there are non-player characters, like nobody's playing them. Their only purpose is to interact with the person who's playing. So, like, they might be a merchant who's going to sell wares or what have you. They have no decision ability of their own. They have one narrative, one thing to do, and they always do it. So the term NPC is used for all these people who parrot whatever policy they can't think on their own. They're pre-programmed by whichever group, therefore non-player character.
Can we talk about subscriptions for a minute? Because we hit 70,000 at some point during the night. I was awakened. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is. And some people are saying it's from the bell, that it's some Pavlov's dog thing that is making people subscribe at an unusually quick rate now to get us to 100,000, which is our goal, Eric.
Yeah, that is obviously our goal. We would like to get to 100,000 before the 60th anniversary of JFK. It would probably behoove us to get to that number.
Look, people, I don't care about the numbers. Right, like Eric said, I don't really care about these numbers, but PR people do. And apparently we have to have 100 to have guests. So if you know anybody, if you could drag an old aunt, let's say she's paralyzed, right? So if you could get her out of the bed and get her towards the computer, even though she's paralyzed, and maybe get her finger on her own YouTube page and get her finger to the subscription button, that would really help one at a time to get some older relatives to do this. Because I think the average age of our audience is 89. So a lot of you work in nursing homes. I know that there's people in nursing homes who can really get some of those people who are on equipment, let's say, to subscribe. It's like voting. That's right. It's just like voting, Natalie. If we could get some of these people to harvest their subscriptions to America's Untold Stories, I think we could hit 100,000 in August or maybe even in July.
And by the way, while you're there, I mean, they're paralyzed anyway, so just go ahead and hit play on the show and just let it run in a loop. They will always appreciate hearing the dulcet tones from the
right. Now, I hope some of you got the PDF of Texas in the Morning on the Madeline Brown episode we did last week, because that book, some people have already, because they told me on Twitter they already got the PDF and they're reading it. And so one guy said it's already dog and earmark by Mark. The pages that have the sex on it, which is pretty funny. That's not true, but it's a great line. It's a great line. And that book, I think, sells for about $300 if you could find it. So I really am thankful for the JFK Book Fund, for not for that book, but for the other books that are a lot cheaper that I've been getting through the book fund. So thanks for the Venmo contributions. Most of them come through Venmo now. which is appropriate. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me see.
Oh, and also I did the show on the radio yesterday.
Yep.
And that was
that's on Locals.
That's on Locals also. If you want to join Locals or not join Locals, whether you want to or not, I've been doing this.
No, it's free.
Oh, it's free. Okay, cool.
It's free, yeah.
So I've been doing this weekly radio show with a guy named Greg Budell down in Montgomery, Alabama, and we're going to stretch it out to 30 minutes starting next week because 20 was a little short. So a lot of it is about the show and promoting the show, but it's a great dialogue between the two of us. He's a veteran radio guy down there. Used to be in LA, used to manage a weird rock group called Styx. I don't know if anybody ever heard of Styx from the 70s. So great.
Renegade.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
Renegade.
Right. Renegade. Eric knows this band. Eric knows. So Greg and I having fun, and we talked about possibly doing a meetup of all the fans in Montgomery, Alabama, Labor Day weekend. So we'll keep you posted on that. We're trying to develop a meetup strategy in a restaurant or bar restaurant in Montgomery, Alabama, hopefully Labor Day weekend.
Yeah,
that'll be the first meetup for Eric and I, although Eric and I have met, a meetup with our fans just exclusively for America's Untold Stories, as opposed to the one we did with Barnes and Viva. So it's kind of it's a red state. It's not in the middle of the country, but we have a huge fan base down there in Georgia and Florida, Mississippi, Alabama. So it would be a good place. And I've never been to Alabama. I've been to Mississippi, but I've never been to Alabama. And I've never been to Montgomery. So it might be a lot of fun to have a meetup in Montgomery, Alabama.
True.
Yeah.
Let me see. All thrust, no rudder. You rattle our cages regarding how door, brand, etc. bracket their topics to mask their Marxist underpinnings. A good wake up, good interview.
Thank you. Interesting. Thank you.
Basil, thank you. Victoria Newland fired Tucker after he named her as #1 pushing the Ukraine war.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you're saying on CNN or on Fox? You're saying now?
I guess she has. I could be. She probably has some influence on that.
I wouldn't be surprised if she has influence. That's for sure. Her tentacles go everywhere.
Hey, I think I've got an intruder here.
Really?
I'm a little bit nervous, folks.
Oh my God! What the hell's going on there? What the hell's happening there, Nate? I got an entire East Coast. There's an entire East Coast thing here today. This is, of course, Nate the rapper, the brother of the famous Nate the lawyer, who comes down to D.C. and puts on shows down there. Nice to see you, Nate. Nice to see you.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the audio, he can't hear you. So,
okay,
Nate, he was saying that you're a horrible, terrible person. No, I'm just kidding.
It's nice to see you too. Nice to see you too.
Welcome to the channel. Welcome to the channel.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Hunley's got an open door policy down there.
That's right. That's right.
Next to Ruby to Marcello. Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Kieran Noth is a new member. Thank you very much. Let me see here. And Sparty Matt. NPC in a sentence. I appreciate Mark hitting the bell an even number of times because I'm an NPC and keep hitting unsubscribe. If you hit the bell and
somebody else said that. Yeah, somebody else said if I leave the bell off at the end, everyone will have unsubscribed based on the subscription math of the bell. So I lost track. So we're going to lose everybody. I lost track.
It is a solid point.
Okay, everybody subscribe.
Stop. There we go. You're frozen. Ramble Gamble, love the show. Congrats on 70K. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a 70.1. Don't want to leave out that extra 100 that came today. We've got one more Rumble rant that came in. Went to school with the son of a Richard Seaman. If there's going to be a name that turns you gay, you'd think that one would do it.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's just one of many. There's others. There's Jeff Balls. There's Jimmy Scrotum. Oh
my God. All right. So I got some quick locals tips here. Wow. Several locals tips.
Wow. Go on. Tell us about it.
Well, Wells Mortensen, did the guest kill anyone in a funny way? No.
No, I don't think so.
But people were hoping that he killed Maxine Waters.
Yeah, he was in some kerfuffles that he was uncomfortable or denounced at first, but then forced to explain.
That was funny that he denied Ann Coulter completely, but he
Yeah.
kind of circled around after the Maxine Waters. I was like, oh, wait a minute here. You kind of were saying there was nothing. And then you sort of did say that something happened during college. I'm like, okay, so I want the other shoe to
Right.
drop here pretty soon here, folks.
I was
Yeah,
onto
there's
something.
something
I had sniffed up the tree there. There was something going on there.
Oh, kidding. Let me see. Until Empty sent a tip, Mark is a madman. Professor Tom, will you consider doing an episode on journalism vis-a-vis Edward R. Murrow? I posed the question on the board.
There's already been a George Clooney film on Edward R. Murrow. He's been thoroughly analyzed and reported on. It's not an untold situation. Murrow's pretty well documented. There must be 20 books on Edward R. Murrow and a movie by George Clooney.
All right. Wells Mortensen said, asking part of the interview with a narrative barometer was great.
Having what? What do you say?
Asking part of the interview with a narrative barometer was great. Didn't Mark used to write for National Lampoon? Yes, Mark did. And I think.
Yeah, but that's comedy. I also did straight journalism for over 14 years for the Village Voice. I mean, it's two different things. I mean, people go, you were the editor of the Weekly World News. So what? I mean, that's a comedy paper. That has nothing to do with journalism. I mean, I have journalism credential. Go on. I'm sorry.
But I think, though, that the chops is what they're talking about, because you're trying to get somebody to talk. And
I use humor. Yeah, I will. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So using that to kind of.
Yeah, I do use comedy to relax people in interviews all the time. Yeah, I've always done that. Yeah.
And also to come in sideways. And,
to come in sideways. It's a good device. Yeah. It's a good device. I don't know if I could teach it, but if I was running a journalism class, I would advocate that they come in from not a frontal direction on many of these oblique situations, like the Ann Coulter and Maxine Ward, stuff like that. I mean, there's a way to ask questions that is not directly a direct question. Let me just put it that way.
Right. Let me see. Alehouse 20 sent a tip and said, I was there too. Don't know the context.
Where?
I don't know. Don't sue me said, is the movie The Circle our future? I don't know. Professor Tom is saying that Intel built Celeron chips in Israel. I vaguely remember that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Otto wants to know any ties between the Chinese police stations and Dorothy Kilgallen.
I think she worked as an undercover cop for the Chinese Communist Party. She was an undercover detective. So there we.
And did she have James Files assigned to her?
James Files was arrested by her at one point and placed into a cell in the Chinese Communist Police Station in Chinatown, which was next to a restaurant called Big Wong's that Al Goldstein used to take me and Ratso to when we were editors at National Lampoon.
Okay, makes sense. Professor Tom wants to know if James Holbrook, YouTube super chatter, is related to Hal Holbrook.
I don't know.
Couldn't tell you.
I don't know that. Yeah.
Did Mark Tarkina 53 sent a tip and asked, did Mark see Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds? He was an NPC.
What's the name of the thing with Ryan Reynolds? Because I think I might have seen it.
Free Guy.
No, I did not.
Okay. Don't Sue Me said, please don't bring on Dor Greenwald, Russell Brand, Megan Kelly, Taibbi, Aaron Mate, or others like him. I'm afraid your subscribers would cancel.
I highly doubt that. I think, honey, or sir, I would love to interview any of them, anywhere, anytime, any place.
Right, and you don't. I feel like you can't learn without opening your mind to these different views. And
I'm not going to learn anything interviewing Hunley every week. I got to get the.
Hey now.
No. I'm saying we've done it so much. I mean, I know where you stand on the views, Eric. I mean, you know where I stand. I mean, we can mutually masturbate ourselves intellectually, but that's not going to stimulate the audience.
That's true. No, I'm just joking. Mark, any plans to attend the Danny Masterson trial? Claire Headley is going to be testifying about Scientology, probably Tuesday.
Yeah, I've been monitoring it through a friend of mine used to be at the Village Voice, who had Danny Ortega has a website about it. Ortega's probably here covering it. He's doing daily stuff on it. I'm not Dan. I forget forget his first name, Ortega. But he's been covering the trial really well. Yeah, yeah. So I am curious as to what happens this week as well.
Tom Ortega?
No, it's not Tom. I forget his first name.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I forget his first name right now. It slips my mind.
Professor Tom said, Lord Buckley, come visit me in Huntsville,
Alabama. How about coming to Montgomery and visiting us? Come on up to Montgomery.
I think he might.
Okay.
I think he was going to go visit us in Chattanooga, but
right.
that didn't go through.
Right.
Interested party sent a tip. My old boss was named Dick Palmer.
Okay, there's one. I'll go with that. That's a good one.
Let me. Until it's empty, said Mark is a madman in a magnificent way.
Oh, interesting. A madman. You know, there was the madman strategy that Kissinger talked about when he was negotiating the end of the Vietnam War with the North Vietnamese and the Chinese in Paris, the so-called Paris Accords. And he talked about Nixon as the madman with his finger on the nuclear button, and Kissinger just, kept saying how he might not be able to stop them. And that was a particular strategy that Nixon and Kissinger came up with.
Tony Ortega.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And by the way, speaking of the madman, that made me think too about defense of Trump hiring Michael Bolton, because when he went around, everybody said, "Oh my God, you have that maniac there."
He looks more middle of the road. Yeah, yeah. But the madman strategy was created by Kissinger and Nixon, and you can hear about it on the Nixon tapes. They actually talk about it. Henry. Just tell him I'm a madman, Henry. Tell him I'll bomb the shit out of them with nuclear weapons. Well, Mr. President, I don't think that's going to cut the mustard. I don't think they're going to believe it. Henry, they'll believe it if you tell them. Anybody will believe anything you tell them, Henry. If you go over there, tell them I'm insane, Henry. Tell them I'm crazy. Tell them I will launch multiple nuclear weapons into Hanoi. And that's kind of, I'm slightly exaggerating for effect, but that's kind of what Henry Kissinger did in Paris with the North Vietnamese negotiators.
Well, that's why I was pointing out Trump and Bolton, because Nixon trained Trump a little bit back in the day.
Yeah.
Or at least they met.
Yeah.
So,
well, they met for a long period of time. I think it was supposed to be a half hour, ended up being like 7 or 8 hour meeting between them, according to Roger Stone.
Who was a stellar source.
The one who put them together.
Awesome. Professor Tom, I'm familiar with Clooney's Good Night and Good Luck. I was thinking an early Murrow-like radio broadcaster in World War II with a focus on what journalism used to be. I think if you dig too deeply, you're going to find that there were problems then too.
Right.
I mean, yellow journalism is a term that's quite old for a reason. Professor Tom will see us in Montgomery.
Woo!
And then Don't Sue Me said, Mark obviously wasn't watching the chat. Even on Viva Barnes, they talked about turning off the stream because of Michael Tracey. Oh, Jesus.
No, but I mean, he was on with Viva and Barnes, right?
Okay, yeah. And I guess that they had a rough time too. But,
I don't know what's going on. I'm just interviewing the guy. I don't know what's going on in the chat. I mean, it's a free country. I mean, I'm trying to give you different voices here in this world.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bush has said to bring out Dershowitz. He represents several January 6 members.
Oh, God. I would love to dude, it'd be my dream to interview Dershowitz. I would love that. Big fan. Would love to.
I'll see if I'll ask David and see if we can. But
are you kidding me? That would be
his son runs stuff, so I can try it. I can try to see.
Again, if we had 100,000, subscribers, it wouldn't be a problem.
It definitely would help. Soltron, let us know if you go to Montgomery, so I can say a prayer for you.
Why is that? Why do we need a prayer to go to Montgomery?
Well, maybe just to be safe. We'll travel safe, and I appreciate the thought. I don't know, but I definitely am looking forward to the idea.
Wait, that guy can't make it, or yeah.
But what's coming up Tuesday?
I'm not going to tell you.
Are
No,
you gonna tell
that's no. I'm not going to talk about that. Tuesday.
Oh
You'll
no,
see.
you know.
What?
Actually, no. I'll tell you what. If you go on Locals,
Right.
you can follow for free. You can listen to Mark's interview on the radio, and he does reveal who.
Oh, right.
recovered
On the radio. I
Tuesday.
did say it on the radio. You're right. Go listen to
You
the
did,
radio
so-
show. Right. That's a good point.
So
That's-
go
for the
to
people of
Locals,
Montgomery,
you can follow us
Alabama.
for free.
Yeah, the people of Montgomery, Alabama know what Tuesday's show is going to be about. It's the rest of the nation that doesn't know.
And don't you dare say it in the chat. You know better. You've got secret knowledge. Don't
Right. See,
tell
you
people.
can follow me at Lord Buckley on Twitter, and I'm not going to reveal it either on Twitter.
And he may block you, but we don't know.
Man, there's a lot of nuts on there because I crossed over into the other world today, Hunley. I crossed over, and there are a lot of people coming at me. I had to bail out, and block them.
All right. Well, I am going to go have dinner with Nate.
Woohoo!
And donate. Oswald will be getting another home. Ken. And tomorrow I should have a live stream. Thank you very much, John Fairchild. I don't know why I'm blowing out in the color, but let's turn down the exposure. It said, hey, Nathan's there. Nate's there. We got to brighten it up.
That's funny. That's funny. All right. Well, you
Anyway,
guys have
everybody-
fun, unless you got any more of these chats you got over there, super chats or anything. But
No,
you
got
guys
it
have
all.
fun. I think it was a good interview. I think we had a good time, and we'll be back on Tuesday. Eric will do the grill stream. We'll be over on Locals if you want to join us. Apparently, a lot of people, according to Eric, took my advice and left Fox Nation with their $5 a month and $50 a year, and literally joined up when I said that on Twitter. I was very impressed that they came over to our Locals. Very nice. Very nice. And
it's great to see everybody.
Right. Hope to see some your donations on Venmo. Thank you. We'll see you on Tuesday.
See you then.
All right.